The champagne had gone straight to her head, which was the only explanation Fiona Owens could offer herself when she woke up in sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, next to a man whose jawline could have been carved from marble. She sat up slowly, her heart pounding as fragments of the previous night came rushing back. The charity gala her friend had dragged her to. The open bar. The devastatingly handsome stranger in the tailored suit who had made her laugh so hard she had nearly choked on her drink. The way his dark eyes had locked onto hers when he asked if she wanted to get out of there. The elevator ride to his penthouse, where they had barely made it through the door before his hands were in her hair and her back was against the wall. Fiona pressed her palms to her warm cheeks, mortification flooding through her. She had never done anything like this in her entire 26 years of life. She was a kindergarten teacher who spent her days wiping noses and tying shoelaces, not the kind of woman who went home with mysterious strangers from fancy parties. The man beside her stirred, and Fiona froze. In the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see him clearly. He was even more attractive than she remembered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a strong nose that balanced his refined features. He looked to be in his early 30s, his bare shoulder showing the kind of muscle definition that came from actual workouts, not just good genes. She needed to leave. Now, before this became even more awkward than it already was. Moving as quietly as possible, Fiona slipped out of bed and began gathering her clothes from where they had been scattered across the hardwood floor. Her dress was wrinkled beyond redemption, one shoe hiding under a leather armchair that probably cost more than her car. She dressed quickly, not bothering with her stockings, shoving them into her purse instead. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. Leaving without saying goodbye, Fiona turned, her hand on the doorknob. He was sitting up now, the sheet pooled around his waist, watching her with those intense dark eyes. Even disheveled from sleep, he looked like he belonged in a cologne commercial. "I have to get to work," she said, which was true. It was Friday, and her classroom full of 5-year-olds would be expecting her. He studied her for a moment, and she could not read his expression. Last night was incredible. Heat flooded her cheeks again. It was, but I think we both know it was just one night. Something flickered across his face, too quick for her to identify. Then he nodded slowly. "If that is what you want." "I think it is what we both want," Fiona said gently. "You do not even know my name." "Fiona," he said, and her eyes widened. "You told me when we were dancing. You said your name was Fiona and that you taught kindergarten and loved old movies." She did not remember telling him all that, but then again, there were several parts of the evening that were fuzzy around the edges. "What is your name?" "Flynn," he said. "Flynn Xavier." The name tickled something in her memory, like she should know it, but her head was pounding too hard to make the connection. "It was nice to meet you, Flynn." She left before he could say anything else, practically running to the elevator. It was not until she was in a taxi heading back to her apartment that she let herself think about what had just happened. She had spent the night with a complete stranger. She had been reckless and impulsive and completely unlike herself, and it had been the best night of her life. The thought made her laugh, a slightly hysterical sound that had the taxi driver glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She pressed her fingers to her lips, remembering the way Flynn had kissed her, like she was something precious and wild all at once. But it was over now. Back to reality. Back to her normal, safe, predictable life. Except life had other plans. 6 weeks later, Fiona stood in her small bathroom, staring down at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the counter like accusatory fingers. This could not be happening. This happened to other people, careless people who did not use protection. Except they had used protection. She remembered that clearly. They had been careful, apparently not careful enough. Fiona sat down on the edge of the bathtub, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. She was pregnant. With a stranger's baby. A stranger whose last name she barely remembered and whose phone number she definitely did not have, Flynn Xavier. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed the name into the search engine. The results made her stomach drop. Flynn Xavier was not just some guy. He was the Flynn Xavier, CEO of Xavier Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the country. The 32-year-old billionaire who had taken over his father's company and tripled its value in 5 years. There were dozens of photos of him at charity events, business conferences, looking every bit the powerful executive in his expensive suits. "Oh God," Fiona whispered. She could not tell him. How could she possibly tell him? He probably had women throwing themselves at him every single day. He would think she was trying to trap him, to get his money. He would think this was all some elaborate scheme, but she had to tell him. This was his child too, even if it had been conceived in a one-night stand neither of them had planned. Finding his contact information proved surprisingly difficult. Xavier Industries had a general number, but Fiona could not imagine calling and asking to speak to the CEO about a personal matter. After 2 days of anxiety and searching, she finally found the email address for his executive assistant on the company website. She must have written and deleted the email 20 times before finally hitting send on a version that simply said she needed to speak with Flynn Xavier about an urgent personal matter. And could they please provide a way for her to contact him directly? She did not expect a response. Why would his assistant pass along a message from a random woman? But 3 days later her phone rang from an unknown number. "Is this Fiona Owens?" a crisp female voice asked. "Yes, this is she. Please hold for Mr. Xavier." Fiona's heart stopped. She was at school, in the middle of her lunch break, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of the teacher's lounge. She grabbed her purse and rushed outside to the playground, empty now while the children were in the cafeteria. "Fiona." His voice sent a shiver down her spine, bringing back memories of that night in vivid detail. "Flynn. Hi, thank you for calling me back. Your email said it was urgent." He sounded cautious, professional, nothing like the warm, charming man who had made her laugh at the gala. "Is everything all right? Just say it. Rip off the Band-Aid." "I am pregnant," Fiona said. "And before you ask, yes, I am absolutely certain it is yours. You are the only person I have been with in over a year." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long she thought he had hung up. "Flynn, I am here." His voice sounded strained. "You are sure? I have taken 5 tests. I have a doctor's appointment scheduled for next week to confirm, but yes, I am sure." Another long pause. "Where are you right now?" "At work. I teach at Riverside Elementary. Can you leave?" "Not until 3. "I will send a car for you. We need to talk about this in person." "Flynn, I do not want your money," Fiona said quickly. "I just thought you should know. I have not decided what I am going to do yet, but if I keep the baby, I wanted you to have the choice about whether you wanted to be involved or not." "If you keep the baby," his voice sharpened. "Are you considering not keeping it?" "I am considering all my options." Fiona pressed her free hand to her still flat stomach. This was not exactly planned. "No," Flynn said quietly. "It was not. But Fiona, if you decide to keep this baby, I want to be involved, completely involved. That is not even a question." Something in her chest loosened slightly. "Okay. The car will be there at 3. Please get in it." "How do you know where I work?" "You told me the name of the school that night. I remember everything you told me, Fiona." He hung up before she could respond to that, leaving her standing on the empty playground with her heart racing and her mind spinning. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She went through the motions of teaching, reading stories and mediating arguments over toys, but her mind was 1,000 miles away. When 3 o'clock finally came and she walked outside, there was indeed a black town car waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door for her, and Fiona slid inside, feeling like she had stepped into someone else's life. The interior smelled like leather and money, and there was a bottle of sparkling water waiting in the cup holder with a note in strong, masculine handwriting. "In case you are nauseous. Flynn." The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. They drove to a building in the financial district, all glass and steel and intimidation. The driver led her through a private entrance to an elevator that required a key card to operate. They went straight to the top floor, which of course they did, because Flynn Xavier would have the penthouse office with the best view. His assistant, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, greeted Fiona with a professional smile. "Mr. Xavier is expecting you. Please go right in." The office was enormous, with windows overlooking the city and expensive artwork on the walls. Flynn stood by the windows, his back to her, still wearing his suit from the workday. When he turned to face her, Fiona was struck again by how handsome he was and by how much more intimidating he seemed in this environment. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice formal. "You sent a car. It seemed rude to refuse." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Can I get you anything?" "Water, tea. My assistant says pregnant women should avoid coffee." "Your assistant knows." "No, I Googled it." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style. "I have been Googling a lot of things since your call." Despite everything, Fiona felt herself soften slightly. "Water would be nice." He poured her a glass from a bottle of fancy filtered water, his hand steady even though she could see tension in the line of his shoulders. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed, and she felt that same electric spark from the night they met. "Sit, please," Flynn said, gesturing to the sitting area by the windows rather than his intimidating desk. Fiona sat in a leather armchair, and Flynn took the one across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I want to be involved," he said without preamble. "I want to be a father to this child. I want to support you through the pregnancy. I want to be at doctor's appointments. I want everything. You do not even know me. I know that you are kind and funny and you light up when you talk about your students. I know that you think breakfast food is acceptable at any time of day, and that you have watched Singin' in the Rain so many times you can quote every line. I know that you make me laugh more easily than anyone I have ever met, and I have not been able to stop thinking about you since you walked out of my apartment." Fiona stared at him. "You remember all that, I told you. I remember everything." His dark eyes were intense on hers. "That night was not just some meaningless hookup for me, Fiona. I wanted to see you again. I was planning to track you down, actually, but I was trying to figure out how to do it without seeming like a stalker. You are a billionaire CEO. You could have found me easily. I wanted you to want to see me too." He smiled ruefully. "I kept hoping you would Google me and reach out. When weeks passed and you did not, I figured you really meant it when you said it was just one night." "I did not know who you were until 3 days ago when I Googled your name," Fiona admitted. "I thought you were just some guy. I was just some guy that night. That was the whole point." Flynn leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Do you know how rare it is for people to treat me like a normal person? Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle, but you just wanted to dance and laugh and talk about old movies. It was the best night I had had in years." Fiona took a sip of water, trying to process this. "This is all happening so fast. I know, but we have about 7.5 months to figure it out." He paused. "You are keeping the baby." "Yes," Fiona said, the decision crystallizing as she spoke. I know it is not logical and my life is going to get infinitely more complicated, but yes. I want this baby. The relief on Flynn's face was unmistakable. Thank you. You do not have to thank me for making a decision about my own body. I am thanking you for telling me, for giving me the choice to be involved. He met her eyes. Some women would not have. Some men would not want to be. I am not some men. There was something almost fierce in his voice. I grew up with a father who was barely present, who cared more about his company than his family. I swore I would never be that kind of father. And yet you run the family company. Because someone had to, and I could do it better. Flynn's jaw tightened. But that does not mean I have to make the same mistakes he did. I can be successful and still be present for my child. Our child, Fiona corrected softly. Our child, he agreed, and something warm unfurled in her chest at the way he said it. They talked for 2 more hours, hashing out logistics and expectations. Flynn insisted on paying for all her medical expenses and providing financial support immediately, even though Fiona protested. He wanted to come to every doctor's appointment, wanted updates on everything. He also wanted to see her, to get to know her properly, now that they were going to be connected for the rest of their lives. Like dating, Fiona asked, confused, if you want to call it that. Flynn stood, pacing to the windows. Look, I know this is not how either of us expected this to happen, but we are having a baby together. That is not going anywhere. Would it not be better if we at least liked each other? If we tried to build something real instead of just being co-parents who barely know each other? You want to date me while I am pregnant with your baby. I wanted to date you before I knew you were pregnant with my baby, Flynn corrected. The baby just moves up the timeline. It was insane. It was completely backwards. But looking at Flynn, at the hope and uncertainty in his dark eyes, Fiona found herself saying, Okay, we can try. No promises, but we can see where this goes. The smile that broke across Flynn's face was like sunrise, brilliant and warm. I can work with that. Over the next few weeks, Fiona learned that dating a billionaire was nothing like she had expected. Flynn did not take her to fancy restaurants or exclusive clubs. Instead, he showed up at her apartment on Saturday morning with coffee for himself and herbal tea for her, asking if she wanted to go to the farmer's market. He carried her bags as she picked out vegetables and homemade bread, looking completely out of place in his casual clothes that still somehow screamed money. You have never been to a farmer's market before, have you? Fiona asked as he examined a tomato like it was an alien artifact. I have people who shop for me, Flynn admitted, but I want to do normal things with you, things that regular couples do. We are not a regular couple. I am a kindergarten teacher and you are a billionaire. So, does money mean we cannot buy overpriced organic vegetables together? Fiona laughed, and Flynn's face lit up in a way that made her heart skip. He really did love making her laugh. He came to her first ultrasound, holding her hand as they saw the tiny blob on the screen that would become their baby. Fiona felt tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the reality of it all, and when she looked over at Flynn, his eyes were suspiciously bright too. That is our baby, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That is our baby, Fiona agreed, squeezing his hand. The technician gave them printouts of the ultrasound images, and Flynn stared at his copy the entire drive back to Fiona's apartment, like he was trying to memorize every pixel. I am going to be a father, he said, sounding dazed, having second thoughts, not even slightly. He looked at her, his expression serious. Are you, about the baby, no, about us? Fiona bit her lip. I do not know. This is all so strange, Flynn. We are doing everything backwards. Who says there is a right order? Flynn reached over and took her hand. People get pregnant and then fall in love. It happens. We are not in love. Not yet, he agreed, but I think we could be. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel warm all over. As the weeks passed and Fiona's belly began to show, she found herself falling into an easy rhythm with Flynn. He came over several nights a week, bringing dinner or cooking with her in her small kitchen. He was a surprisingly good cook, something he said he had learned in self-defense after eating too much terrible takeout in college. "You went to college," Fiona teased. "I assumed billionaire heirs just got handed diplomas." "I went to business school at Harvard, actually. Graduated top of my class." Flynn stirred the pasta sauce, looking pleased with himself. "I might have been handed the company, but I earned the right to run it." Fiona was learning these layers to him. The driven businessman who also loved terrible action movies and could quote entire episodes of cooking shows. He was brilliant and funny and surprisingly thoughtful, remembering things she mentioned in passing and following up on them days later. When she mentioned that her classroom needed new books, a shipment arrived the next week with enough children's books to fill 3 shelves. When she complained about her ancient computer dying, he showed up with a new laptop, brushing off her protests about not being able to accept such an expensive gift. "You are carrying my child," he said. "You have to let me take care of you a little bit." "A laptop is not a little bit." "For me it is." He caught her expression and sighed. "I know you do not care about my money, Fiona. It is one of the things I love about you. But please, let me do things to make your life easier. Not because I am trying to buy your affection, but because I care about you and I want to help." It was hard to argue with that, especially when he was looking at her with those earnest dark eyes. By the time Fiona hit her second trimester, they had settled into something that felt remarkably like a real relationship. Flynn had met her friends and her parents, enduring their protective questions with patience and charm. Her mother had pulled Fiona aside after that first dinner and said, "That man is in love with you. I hope you know that. We barely know each other, Mom." "Sometimes you just know," her mother had said, smiling. "That is how it was with your father." Fiona had not known what to say to that, so she had changed the subject. But her mother's words stayed with her, especially during moments like this, when Flynn was stretched out on her couch with his hand on her growing belly. His face lit up with wonder every time the baby moved. "Does that hurt?" he asked as a particularly strong kick rippled across her stomach. "Not hurt exactly, just strange, like there is a tiny gymnast in there. My kid is going to be an Olympic athlete, I am calling it now." Flynn grinned, then grew more serious. "Thank you. For what? For this. For letting me be here for all of it. I know you could have shut me out, kept this to yourself. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a father." Fiona covered his hand with hers. "Thank you for wanting to be one." They stayed like that for a long moment, and Fiona felt something shift between them, deepening into something more than friendship or co-parenting. When Flynn leaned in and kissed her, soft and sweet, it felt inevitable, like coming home. The kiss deepened, and Fiona found herself pulling him closer, her fingers tangling in his hair. It was different from that first night, less urgent but somehow more intense, weighted with the feelings growing between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Flynn rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling for you," he said quietly. "I think I have been since that first night. I just thought I should tell you." Fiona's heart was hammering against her ribs. "I am falling for you too. It scares me." "Why?" "Because our lives are so different. Because this is all happening so fast. Because what if we are just caught up in the baby and the intensity of the situation and it is not real?" Flynn pulled back enough to look at her properly. "This is real, Fiona. What I feel for you has nothing to do with the baby and everything to do with you. The fact that you are brilliant with kids and cry during animated movies and burn toast every single time you try to make it. The way you care about people, really care, not just going through the motions. The way you look at the world like it is full of possibilities. He cupped her face gently. I love you. I know it is fast and crazy and probably too soon to say it, but I do. Fiona felt tears spilling down her cheeks. I love you too. I did not want to, but I do. Flynn laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. You did not want to. You are so far out of my league it is ridiculous. You date models and actresses, not kindergarten teachers. I have never dated anyone who mattered, Flynn said fiercely. Not until you. And you are not out of my league, Fiona. If anything, I am terrified you are going to wake up one day and realize you could do so much better than a workaholic billionaire who does not know how to buy vegetables. You are learning, Fiona said, smiling through her tears. You only asked me what 3 things were at the farmer's market this week. Progress. He kissed her again, tender and full of promise. Move in with me. What? Move in with me? Your apartment is too small, especially with a baby coming. My penthouse has plenty of room, a whole nursery if we want. You could cut your commute to work in half, and I want to wake up with you every morning. That is a huge step. We are having a baby together. I think we have already taken all the huge steps. Flynn stroked her cheek. But if it is too much, we can wait. I just want you to know that I am all in, Fiona. Completely. Fiona thought about her cramped 1-bedroom apartment, about the logistics of bringing a baby home to that tiny space. She thought about Flynn's penthouse with its beautiful views and spacious rooms. But mostly she thought about the way she felt when she was with him, safe and cherished and like maybe fairy tales could come true. Okay, she said. Okay, let us do it. Let us move in together and be a completely backwards couple who does everything out of order. Flynn's answering smile was brilliant. He kissed her again, and this time when things heated up, Fiona did not pull away. She let him lead her to the bedroom. Let him worship her changing body with a reverence that made her feel beautiful and desired despite the weight she had gained, and the way her clothes did not fit anymore. Afterwards, curled up in Flynn's arms with his hand protective over her belly, Fiona felt a contentment she had never known before. This was not the life she had planned, but it was becoming something better than she could have imagined. Moving in with Flynn was an adjustment. His penthouse was gorgeous but impersonal, decorated by some expensive designer with no warmth or character. Fiona immediately set about changing that, adding plants and colorful throw pillows and framed photos of their families. Flynn watched her transform his space with amusement and something that looked like awe. I have lived here for 3 years and it never felt like home, he said, watching her arrange books on his empty shelves. You have been here a week and it already feels different. It needed life, Fiona said. You do realize you had literally nothing personal anywhere. No photos, no mementos, nothing that showed who you are. I am not home much. You are going to be now. She patted her belly. This baby needs a father who comes home. I will be here, Flynn promised. I am already cutting back my hours. My CFO nearly had a heart attack when I told him I wanted to be home by 6 every night. You do not have to do that for me. I am doing it for all of us, for the family we are building. He came over and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands settling on her belly. I meant what I said about not being like my father. This baby is going to know they are loved and wanted, and so are you. The baby's room came together slowly, a joint project that involved many disagreements about colors and themes. Flynn wanted to hire a designer, but Fiona insisted they do it themselves. This should be from us, she said firmly, not from some stranger who does not know our child. So they painted the walls a soft yellow together, Flynn in old jeans with paint in his hair, looking more relaxed than Fiona had ever seen him. They built furniture and hung decorations, and argued over whether the mobile should be animals or stars. Stars, Flynn insisted. Then we can tell the baby about constellations. They will be an infant. They will not care about constellations. They will eventually. I am thinking ahead. They compromised on animals with star patterns, and Fiona had to admit it looked perfect. Her 20-week ultrasound revealed they were having a girl, news that had Flynn walking around with a dazed expression for days. A daughter, he kept saying. I am going to have a daughter. You seem surprised. I am terrified, he admitted. What do I know about raising a girl? What do you know about raising a boy? You would have been terrified either way. Fiona took his hand. We will figure it out together. Flynn pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I love you. You are amazing, and I am the luckiest man alive. Even though I cried over a commercial this morning, especially because of that. It was a very moving commercial about dogs. As Fiona's belly grew larger and her due date approached, the reality of impending parenthood began to feel very real. She stopped working at the start of her third trimester, her students giving her a tearful goodbye party complete with handmade cards and off-key singing. Flynn took time off too, wanting to be with her as much as possible. Your company will not fall apart if you take a few weeks, Fiona assured him when he worried about delegating too much. I know. I hired good people, but it is hard letting go of control. You are going to have to learn. Babies do not respect your carefully planned schedule. Flynn laughed. Point taken. They took birthing classes together, Flynn asking so many detailed questions that the instructor started directing most of her attention to him. He read every parenting book he could get his hands on, making notes and highlighting sections. Fiona found it endearing, the way he approached fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to running his company. You know there is no manual that will prepare you for this, right? She said one evening, watching him frown over a chapter about sleep training. I like to be prepared. And I love that about you, but some things you just have to learn by doing. Flynn set down the book and pulled her into his arms. As long as I am doing it with you, I think we will be okay. They got married a month before the baby was due. A small ceremony in the penthouse with just their families and closest friends. Fiona wore a simple dress that accommodated her belly, and Flynn could not stop touching her, his hand always finding hers or resting on her lower back. When they said their vows, his voice was rough with emotion. I never believed in love at first sight until I met you. I never believed I could have a family that felt like this, whole and real. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for giving me everything I never knew I needed. I promise to love you and our daughter with everything I have, for the rest of my life. Fiona was crying too hard to get through her vows without pausing to compose herself. You showed me that sometimes the best things in life are the unplanned ones. That taking a risk can lead to everything you never knew you wanted. I love you, Flynn. I loved you when you were just a stranger at a party, and I love you more every single day. I cannot wait to build our life together. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Flynn kissed her like they were the only two people in the world, his hands cradling her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Her parents were thrilled, though her father had given Flynn a very serious talk about treating his daughter right. Flynn had taken it with good grace, promising that Fiona and the baby would always come first. He really loves you, her mother said during the small reception. I can see it in the way he looks at you. I know, Fiona said, watching Flynn laugh at something her brother said. I got so lucky. You both did. 3 weeks later, Fiona went into labor at 2 in the morning, her water breaking while she was trying to get comfortable in bed. Flynn shot awake immediately, switching from sleepy to alert in seconds. Okay, hospital bag, car, keys. Where are the keys? On the counter where they always are. Breathe, Flynn. You breathe. You are the one in labor. He was pulling on clothes frantically, hopping on one foot as he tried to get his shoes on. Should I call the doctor? What about your parents? Contractions first. We have time. Fiona was remarkably calm, even as another contraction rolled through her. This baby is not coming in the next 5 minutes. Flynn drove to the hospital with white-knuckled intensity, one hand gripping the steering wheel and the other holding Fiona's. She squeezed it during contractions, breathing through them the way they had learned in class. You are doing great, Flynn kept saying. So great, we are almost there. The hospital staff got them checked in and settled into a labor and delivery room. The hours that followed were a blur of contractions and breathing exercises, and Flynn being the best support partner Fiona could have asked for. He held her hand, brought her ice chips, wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. When she yelled at him during a particularly bad contraction, he just kissed her hand and told her he loved her. I am sorry, she gasped when it passed. I did not mean it. You can yell at me all you want, whatever you need. Their daughter was born just after dawn, coming into the world with a healthy cry that had both Fiona and Flynn sobbing with relief and joy. The nurse placed her on Fiona's chest, and Fiona looked down at the tiny, perfect human they had created. She is beautiful, Flynn whispered, his hand gentle on the baby's head. She looks like you, she has your nose, poor kid. Fiona laughed, exhausted and euphoric. I love you too, so much. Flynn kissed her softly, then kissed their daughter's head. Welcome to the world, little one. They named her Felicity Rose Xavier, Rose after Flynn's grandmother. She was perfect, with dark hair and blue eyes that Flynn swore would change to look like Fiona's. Fiona could not stop staring at her, marveling at her tiny fingers and the way she made little snuffling sounds in her sleep. Flynn was besotted, holding Felicity with a reverence that made Fiona's heart overflow. He changed diapers and did midnight feedings and walked the floor with their daughter when she cried, singing off-key lullabies that somehow worked. You are a natural, Fiona said one night, watching him rock Felicity back to sleep. I am terrified I am doing everything wrong. Welcome to parenting. I think that feeling never goes away, she smiled. But you are doing great, Flynn. Better than great. The first few months were hard, filled with sleepless nights and endless diapers and learning their daughter's cues. But they did it together, supporting each other through the exhaustion and the overwhelming love that came with being parents. Flynn was true to his word about being present. He worked from home as much as possible, taking calls while holding Felicity or typing one-handed while she napped on his chest. His board of directors grumbled about his reduced hours, but Flynn did not care. Let them grumble, he said. This is more important. When Felicity was 3 months old, Fiona went back to work part-time, and Flynn rearranged his schedule so he could be home with their daughter 2 days a week. Fiona came home one afternoon to find him on the floor of the nursery, surrounded by toys, making ridiculous faces to get Felicity to laugh. How was work? He asked, not looking away from their daughter. Good. How was your day? We read 3 books, had a dance party to some extremely educational children's music, and she only spit up on me twice. I call that a win. Fiona sat down next to them, and Felicity immediately reached for her with chubby hands. She gathered their daughter close, breathing in that perfect baby smell. I missed you both. We missed you too. Flynn wrapped his arm around her shoulders, but she was a champion today, barely cried at all. Life settled into a new normal, one that involved a lot of baby gear and very little sleep, but also more happiness than Fiona had ever known. She and Flynn grew closer through the shared experience of parenthood, learning to communicate better and support each other through the challenges. On their first anniversary, Flynn surprised her with a weekend getaway, her parents happily taking Felicity for 2 days. They went to a cabin in the mountains, just the two of them, and spent the time sleeping and talking and reconnecting in ways that were hard with a baby constantly demanding attention. "I did not think I could love you more than I already did," Flynn said as they sat on the deck watching the sunset. "But seeing you as a mother to our daughter, seeing how much love and care you put into everything you do, I fall for you more every single day. You are going to make me cry. Happy tears, I hope. The happiest." Fiona leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you. For what?" "For being exactly the partner I needed. For loving me and Felicity so completely. For turning one reckless night into the best thing that ever happened to me." Flynn turned her face to his dark eyes soft. "That night might have been reckless, but everything after has been the most intentional thing I have ever done. Choosing you, choosing us, choosing this life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." He kissed her as the sun set behind the mountains, and Fiona thought about the strange, winding path that had brought them here. A charity gala, too much champagne, a handsome stranger who had turned out to be so much more, a positive pregnancy test that had changed everything. When Felicity was 6 months old, Fiona was contacted by her school with news that the lead kindergarten teacher was retiring, and they wanted to offer Fiona the position. It came with better pay and benefits, but it would mean going back to work full-time. She discussed it with Flynn that evening while Felicity played with blocks on the floor between them. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I do not know. I love teaching. I miss my full days with the kids, but I also love having time with Felicity. So keep working part-time." "Money is not an issue." "I know, but this is my career, Flynn. I do not want to give that up." "I am not asking you to. I am saying you have choices that most people do not have. You can take the position. You can stay part-time. You can quit entirely and stay home with Felicity. Whatever you want, we can make it work." Fiona looked at him, at his earnest face and the way he was so clearly trying to support her without influencing her decision. "What would make you happy?" "You being happy makes me happy. Genuinely, I want you to do what feels right for you." After several days of thinking, Fiona accepted the position. Flynn hired a nanny to help during the days when neither of them could be home, a kind woman named Sarah who Felicity immediately took to. It was the right choice, letting Fiona have her career while still being fully present as a mother. As Felicity grew, she became a perfect mix of both of them. She had Flynn's determination and Fiona's warmth, his intelligence and her creativity. She was wild and loving and kept them both on their toes. "She is going to run a country someday," Flynn said one evening, watching their 2-year-old daughter boss around her stuffed animals with impressive authority. "Or a major corporation." "Please, not a corporation. I want her to dream bigger than that." Fiona laughed. Says the CEO. "I know what I am talking about. This kid is going to change the world." When Felicity was 3, Fiona got pregnant again, a surprise that shocked them both despite knowing how these things happened. "But we were careful," Fiona said, staring at the positive test. "Not careful enough, apparently." Flynn was grinning like a fool. "Another baby, we are having another baby. You are happy about this, are you kidding? I am thrilled." He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down. "Sorry, should I not do that when you are pregnant?" "I think I am fine." Fiona pressed her hands to her face. 2 kids, we are going to have 2 kids. We already know how to do this, we are going to be great." He was right. Their son, Flynn Xavier, was born on a rainy October evening, coming faster than Felicity had and with less drama. He was calm where his sister was energetic, content to observe the world with serious blue eyes that were definitely Fiona's. Felicity was enchanted with her baby brother, wanting to help with everything and constantly asking when he would be big enough to play with her. Fiona spent a lot of time explaining that babies needed time to grow, while Flynn juggled work calls and diaper changes with practiced ease. "I thought one baby was hard," Fiona said one exhausting afternoon when Felix would not stop crying and Felicity was having a meltdown over the wrong color cup. "This too shall pass," Flynn said, somehow sounding calm despite the chaos. "Remember when Felicity was this small and we thought we would never sleep again? And then we figured it out. And then we had another baby." Flynn laughed, bouncing Felix while simultaneously convincing Felicity that the blue cup was actually the best cup. "We make beautiful children." "It is a problem. Flynn Xavier, do not even think about it." "About what? Having more kids, two is plenty." "I was just going to say we should get a dog." "That is basically the same thing." But despite the chaos and exhaustion, Fiona had never been happier. Her life was full in ways she never could have predicted that night at the gala when she met a handsome stranger with a charming smile. She had a career she loved, two beautiful children, and a husband who still looked at her like she hung the moon. When Felix was 6 months old and starting to sleep through the night more consistently, Flynn surprised her with a weekend trip, this time bringing the kids and grandparents to a beach house he rented. "I thought we could use a family vacation," he said as they watched Felicity play in the sand while Felix napped in his carrier. "This is perfect. I have been thinking." Flynn took her hand. "About how far we have come, about that night we met. What about it?" "I never thanked you properly for taking a chance on me, for not running away when you found out you were pregnant, for giving us a shot even though it was crazy and backwards and probably seemed impossible." "It did seem impossible," Fiona admitted. "I kept waiting for it to fall apart. For you to realize you did not actually want this life. This life is everything I never knew I wanted." Flynn cupped her face gently. "You gave me a family, Fiona, real love, a reason to come home every night. I spent so many years just going through the motions, building a company because it was expected, dating women I did not care about because it was easier than being alone. And then I met you and everything changed. You changed my life too. I was playing it safe, keeping my world small. You showed me I could be brave. We were brave together." He kissed her softly. "I love you. I love our messy, chaotic, beautiful life. I would not change a single thing." Fiona looked at their daughter building sandcastles, at their son sleeping peacefully, at the man who had become her whole world. "Neither would I." Years passed in a blur of school plays and business meetings and family dinners. Felicity started kindergarten in her mother's classroom, much to everyone's delight. Felix grew into a thoughtful, gentle boy who loved books as much as his mother did. Flynn continued to run Xavier Industries, but remained actively involved in every aspect of his children's lives, coaching Felicity's soccer team and reading bedtime stories to Felix every night he was home. On their 5th anniversary, Flynn took Fiona back to the hotel where they had first met, the charity gala that had changed both their lives. "This feels very full circle," Fiona said as they walked into the ballroom where another fundraiser was taking place. "I wanted to come back to where it all started." Flynn pulled her onto the dance floor, holding her close as they swayed to the music. "Do you remember that night? I remember thinking you were the most attractive man I had ever seen. I remember being shocked that you wanted to talk to me. I remember watching you laugh with your friend and thinking I had to meet you. And when I did, when we started talking, I knew you were special. I knew that night meant something." "Did you really?" "Maybe not consciously, but looking back, yes." I think some part of me knew you were going to change my life." Fiona rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "What would you have done if I had not contacted you? If I had decided not to tell you about the baby? I like to think I would have found you eventually. That the universe would have brought us back together." He pulled back to look at her. "But I am grateful I did not have to find out, that you were brave enough to reach out. I was terrified. So was I when you called. I thought you were going to tell me you never wanted to see me again. Instead, I told you I was pregnant. Best news I ever got, even if it scared me senseless at the time." They danced for a while longer, wrapped up in each other and the memories of that first night. When they left the gala, Flynn took her back to his penthouse, to the home they had built together. Felicity and Felix were staying with grandparents for the night, giving them rare time alone. They made love slowly, taking their time in ways that were impossible with two young children in the house. Afterwards, lying in Flynn's arms, Fiona felt contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. "Happy anniversary," Flynn murmured against her hair. "Happy anniversary. Here is to 5 years and forevermore." Forever sounds perfect. When Felicity was 8 and Felix was 5, Flynn made a decision that shocked everyone, including Fiona. He stepped down as CEO of Xavier Industries, handing control to his carefully groomed successor and taking a position on the board instead. "Are you sure about this?" Fiona asked when he told her. "That company is your legacy. My children are my legacy. You are my legacy. This life we built together." Flynn pulled her close. "I have spent 8 years trying to balance everything, and I do not want to just get by anymore. I want to be present, really present. I want to volunteer in Felicity's classroom and take Felix to the park on weekday afternoons. I want to have dinner with my family every single night. You are going to get bored. I am going to consult, maybe do some angel investing. I will still work, just on my own terms." He kissed her forehead. "I want more time with you too. We have been so busy with kids and work, I feel like we barely get time alone anymore. That is parenthood. I know, but our kids are getting older. They need us differently now, and I want to make sure we do not lose ourselves in the chaos." It was a transition, having Flynn home more. He threw himself into being a hands-on father with the same intensity he had brought to running his company. He volunteered at the school, organized family outings, and even started coaching Felix's little league team. "You have created a monster," Fiona told her parents one Sunday dinner. "He color codes the family calendar now." "I heard that," Flynn called from the kitchen where he was helping the kids wash up. "Organization is important." "He is happy," her father said quietly. "I have known Flynn for years now, watched him become part of this family. I have never seen him this content." It was true. Flynn had a lightness about him now, less of the tension that used to sit in his shoulders. He laughed more, played more, seemed more grounded in ways that had nothing to do with business success. That summer, they took the kids to Europe, spending 3 weeks exploring cities and beaches and making memories. Felicity kept a detailed journal of everywhere they went, while Felix collected shells and rocks from every location. Flynn took approximately 1,000 photos, documenting every moment. "You are worse than a tourist," Fiona teased as he lined the kids up for yet another picture in front of the Eiffel Tower. "I want to remember all of this, every single moment." On their last night in Paris, after the kids were asleep in the adjoining hotel room, Flynn and Fiona sat on their balcony overlooking the city lights. "This has been the best trip," Fiona said, leaning against him. "We should do it every year. Take the kids somewhere new, explore together." "That would be amazing." She paused. "Flynn, are you happy, really happy? You gave up so much when you left Xavier Industries." "I did not give up anything that mattered. The company is fine without me. Better, probably. I was holding on because I thought I had to, because it was expected. But I do not want to live my life based on other people's expectations anymore. He turned to face her fully. You and the kids are what matter. This right here. I have more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. What is the point of all that success if I am too busy to enjoy my life? I just want to make sure you do not regret it. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Flynn kissed her softly. I love you, Fiona. Thank you for giving me permission to choose my family first. You always choose us. Now I get to choose us every single day, not just when I can fit it into my schedule. Life continued in this new rhythm, busy but less frantic. Flynn did consulting work that interested him, sat on charitable boards, and devoted himself to being an active father and husband. Fiona continued teaching, loving her students and the work she did. When Felicity turned 10, she asked them how they met, and Fiona and Flynn exchanged glances across the dinner table. That is a complicated story, Fiona said carefully. Did you meet at work? Were you friends first? Did you have a first date? Flynn laughed. We met at a party, actually. Your mom was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and I had to talk to her. And you fell in love? Not right away, Fiona said. It took time. We had to get to know each other. But we fell in love eventually, Flynn added. And then we had you, and you were the best thing that ever happened to us. Felicity seemed satisfied with that answer, turning her attention back to her pasta. Felix, meanwhile, was building a fort out of his vegetables, oblivious to the conversation. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Flynn found Fiona in their room, looking at photo albums from when Felicity was a baby. Thinking about that conversation at dinner, he asked. Wondering what we are going to tell them when they are older. About how Felicity came before we got married. About the fact that we barely knew each other when I got pregnant. We will tell them the truth. That sometimes life does not follow a neat path, but that does not make it any less beautiful. That they were wanted and loved from the moment we knew about them. Flynn sat beside her, looking at a photo of tiny newborn Felicity. We will tell them that their parents took a chance on each other and built something real. I hope they understand. They will, because they will see how much we love each other, how committed we are to this family. He closed the album gently. Stop worrying. We have done a good job, Fiona. Our kids are happy and healthy and loved. That is what matters. She knew he was right. Their unconventional start did not define them. What defined them was the life they had built together, the family they had created, the love that grew stronger every year. On their 10th anniversary, Flynn arranged for the kids to stay with friends and took Fiona to a surprise destination. They ended up at a bed and breakfast in wine country, the same place they had gone for their baby-moon before Felicity was born. Full circle again, Fiona said as they walked through the vineyard at sunset. I like bookending our story with these moments. Flynn took her hand. 10 years married. 11 years since we met. It feels impossible that it has been that long, and also like no time at all. We have built a good life. The best life. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. I have something for you, Flynn. You did not have to get me anything. Just open it. He handed her a small box, and Fiona's heart skipped at the jewelry store label. Inside was a beautiful bracelet with charms representing their family. 2 heart charms engraved with Felicity and Felix's names. A small house. A book. A soccer ball. Things that represented their life together. Flynn, this is beautiful. There is room for more charms. For all the memories we are going to make. He fastened it around her wrist carefully. I wanted you to have something that showed our story, everything we have built together. Fiona looked at the bracelet, at the thoughtfulness behind every detail, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. I love you so much. I love you too. Thank you for taking a chance on me all those years ago, for seeing past the money and the reputation to the man underneath, for building this life with me. Thank you for being exactly who I needed, for loving me and our children so completely, for proving that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. They kissed as the sun set over the vineyard, and Fiona thought about the journey that had brought them here. A one-night stand that had turned into a lifetime. An accident that had become everything. The years continued to pass, filled with school concerts and family vacations and quiet evenings at home. Felicity grew into a confident teenager with her father's drive and her mother's compassion. Felix remained gentle and thoughtful, surprising everyone by developing a passion for art. Flynn and Fiona grew older together, their love deepening with time and experience. They weathered challenges and celebrated triumphs, always as a team. When Felicity left for college, they cried together. When Felix won a prestigious art competition, they cheered the loudest. On their 20th anniversary, they renewed their vows in a ceremony attended by friends and family. Felicity and Felix stood up with them, both of them old enough now to understand the full story of how their parents met and fell in love. "I think it is romantic," Felicity said when Fiona worried about telling them everything. "You took a risk and it paid off. You followed your heart." "We were lucky," Fiona said. "You made your own luck," Felix corrected. "You could have walked away from each other. You chose to stay." He was right. They had chosen each other, over and over again, through uncertainty and change and the normal chaos of life. That was what made their story special, not how it started, but how they had committed to seeing it through. As Flynn slipped a new ring onto her finger during the ceremony, his eyes were as intense as they had been that first night. 20 years ago, I married my best friend, the mother of my children, the love of my life. I thought I knew what forever meant then. But every year with you has shown me new depths of love I did not know existed. You have made me a better man, a better father, a better human being. I promise to love you for 20 more years and 20 after that and every day beyond. Fiona's vows were just as heartfelt, speaking of the life they had built and the future they still had ahead. When they kissed, their children cheered, and Fiona felt a sense of completeness that had nothing to do with endings and everything to do with the continuing journey they were on together. That evening at the reception, surrounded by everyone they loved, Flynn pulled Fiona onto the dance floor. "Do you remember the last time we danced like this?" he asked. "Our wedding. And before that, the night we met. I knew that night I wanted to dance with you forever. I just did not know it yet. Forever is turning out pretty well. The best." He held her closer. "Here is to the next 20 years, Mrs. Xavier, and all the years after that." They danced as their family and friends watched. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of ways and built something extraordinary. Their children danced nearby, products of a love that had started with one reckless night and grown into something neither of them could have predicted. As the night wore on and Fiona watched Flynn dance with Felicity, then sweep a laughing Felix into a silly waltz, she thought about the woman she had been 11 years ago. Scared and uncertain, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake by telling Flynn about the pregnancy. If she could go back and tell that woman how it would all turn out, she would assure her that everything would be okay. Better than okay. Perfect in its imperfection, because sometimes love did not follow a script. Sometimes it started with champagne and bad decisions and a positive pregnancy test. Sometimes the accident became the future, the unexpected became everything, and a one-night stand turned into forever. And as Flynn caught her eye across the room and smiled, that same smile that had captured her heart so many years ago, Fiona smiled back. Their story might not have been conventional, but it was theirs, and she would not change a single moment of it.